Hello, hello. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everyone watching.
Hi to you all.
Today we have a very special guest. Deepika, would you say a few things about yourself to the two people who don't know you?
What you mean us?
All right. My name is Deepika Vasudevan. Did you lose me? Am I there still?
No,
You
no,
are
you're
here.
here. You're a bit blurry, but you're
Oh, you
here.
actually did lose me. Am I back?
You are here. You are here.
Yeah, yeah, you're
Okay,
okay.
I'm here. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so I'm from India. I was born in a city called Chennai on the southeast coast of India. I speak Tamil, Hindi, now speak English. I'm an English teacher. Um, I have been since 2013. That's when my English journey began with a CELTA. And then I went on to get a master's in TESOL from Teachers College, Columbia University. And now I'm still in my first year of my PhD in Spain at the University of Lleida, focusing on freelance teachers and English as a lingua franca.
Sounds great. We did lose you for a second, but
Eek. There's a bit of a
I
delay.
think we'll make it today somehow. For those of you in the chat who know Deepika or would like to ask a few questions today, please say hi so that we know that we are live and running. And could you tell us a bit about your PhD thesis? What are you exploring and researching now?
You're cutting out pretty much the whole
Oh,
time.
you
So
cannot
I'm
hear
gonna
us.
real quick. No, not very well.
Okay. You
I'm gonna
restart your
switch
internet,
to,
perhaps.
yeah.
All right, we'll wait for you.
And while we're here, we can see if anybody is in the chat. Oh, we do have. Anna is here.
Yay!
Anna, good morning. Hope you're seeing us and hearing us. Okay.
She said, very much alive.
Very much. We're all very much alive in the morning.
We were alive in the back room talking about Spanish omelets. And now we don't have our guest anymore.
She went for breakfast, probably.
Yes, I think she was hungry. Hi,
As soon
Katerina.
as we start to talk about food, is the case.
She's back. Okay.
Oh, you're
Hello.
much more clearer than before. So your
Oh,
Oh,
internet is
excellent. I'm
working.
glad. I switched to my mobile hotspot.
Okay,
Yeah,
it's an upgrade,
great.
definitely.
Yeah.
Everyone saying good morning.
Hello. Good morning, everyone.
Hi, Mihaela. Hi, Zlatna.
Excellent.
Nice to see you. Good morning.
I actually don't know how much of my introduction you heard.
Let's
And
do
I
it
definitely didn't
again.
hear you after that.
Let's do it again.
Okay. We can do it again. Excellent. My name is Deepika Vasudevan. I'm from India, from a city called Chennai, which is on the Spanish. I was going to say the Spanish coast. No, the southeast coast. I just saw Spanish comfort food in the comments. Oh
Okay,
gosh, not
as soon
alive,
as
not
food
not very
started, it's
alive
all over.
this morning. On this, which is on the southeast coast of India. I've been teaching English in a lot of different contexts from 2013 when my journey began with a CELTA. I've then gone on to get my master's in TESOL from Teachers College, Columbia University. Right now, I specialize in teaching adults, professional adults, more or less. And I'm in my first year of my PhD, focusing on freelance teachers and English as a lingua franca. And I very soon hope to be able to be a teacher trainer in the field of English as a lingua franca as well.
You
Thank
already
you
are.
for repeating the announcement. And with all the distractions about food, so
Too many distractions about food. Food is a very easy distraction. So I'm here for it.
Easy and tasty.
Yeah.
You mentioned teacher training. We consider this training as well. You are sharing your knowledge, and there's a lot of teachers
Brilliant.
listening. So you are definitely already a teacher
On my
trainer.
way. Brilliant. That sounds good to me. I definitely don't identify as one yet, but this feels good.
Tell us a bit about English as a lingua franca. What is
Yeah.
that? Why is it important?
I wanted to ask you a couple of questions before we started, just to set the context, if that's okay.
oh, I like it. We're
Yeah,
switching the interview thing.
a,
Okay.
a bit
Nice.
of a pop quiz type situation. This is for both of you, as well as anyone who's listening now or later. You can put the answer in the comments before you move on with the rest of the thing, even if you're watching the replay. How many people in the world do you think speak English?
You mean by total number or percentage, or
Either one.
I don't even know how many people are in the world. So I'd say
Almost 8 billion, I think.
60%.
Less, actually. You would be surprised.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There's almost 8 billion people in the world. And I think at the moment, many sources say that it's about, I'm still not telling you the answer until Edita guesses and we get some
Okay,
guesses in the
I'm
comments.
waiting. I'm waiting for the comments, but I would say I think around 2 billion, maybe.
Yeah. So most sources say about 2 billion. But maybe you already know the answer to this as well. What do you think is the proportion of speakers who are native speakers of English versus others who are in any capacity speaking English as one of their additional languages?
No, I'd say we best wait for the answers from the audience now.
Okay.
So I won't guess.
Easy way out. Well done.
There's two of us at least.
At least. Yeah, I would say, again, many sources say that only about less than 400 million people speak English as a native language. And of course, there is a lot of debate on what a native speaker means, who is considered a native speaker, and how do you define a language as a native language or one of your native languages. So in my case, for example, I've always been confused about this, and I will always remain confused about this, whether English is my native language. I often call English my dominant language instead, because it is a language that I use. It is the largest. It gets used the largest proportion. Let's put it that way, because I speak Tamil with my family and sometimes my friends. I don't talk to my friends every day, as with most adults in the world. And so it's just my family. I am speaking more Spanish than Tamil right now. Tamil is my first language. So what does that make it? So English, I consider it as my dominant language. And even though I started learning it along with my first language, I have never been able. This is probably my internalized native speakerism coming in and saying, "You're not a native speaker when you look like that," something like that. So I've never really been comfortable calling myself.
Why do we need to care about it anyway?
We don't. That's a great question.
Yeah.
And this is something that I wanted to focus on throughout the session. Is in our call on Monday, I realized something because Darko, you can be the person here who, as someone who's not involved so deeply in the industry that is the English language teaching industry, I think you come in with
I'm not involved at all, so
gaps. But
not
I'm
deeply,
saying
not
this
at all.
right, exactly. And I'm saying this in the best way possible. I mean this as a compliment. You come with gaps in knowledge about how this industry works. And I think that can really help this conversation, because you're asking a very simple question: why does it even matter, right?
Yeah, why do you even
But it
care?
matters
I
so
mean,
much in this
do
industry.
do only teachers really care about it, or do students really care? Is it a native speaker or not, or do schools actually just value more native speakers, and that way they present it to the students?
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly what happens, and it's been happening for years and years. Um, but coming back to the original question of what exactly English as a lingua franca is, the idea that only a small percentage of the world speaks English is in the past. English is spoken by many, many people now, billions, as we've seen. Even if not more than 50%, it is a large population that speaks English in various capacities, in various levels, and for various reasons. English has become the language of science, the language of business, the language of technology, all of these things, right? The language of the internet. And we can argue, and we should argue, that other languages need to have the same status as English does. When English speaking people go to other countries, they shouldn't actually expect everyone around them to suddenly start speaking English to them. It should be the other way around. On the contrary, they should learn the language of that place, the local language, and interact with the people. Um, but sadly, that is not the case at the moment. So it is still continued to be valued, being a confident and international English speaker. And so, English being the lingua franca, in the sense that English being the common language to do all of these different things, it comes from a lot of history and politics that we can acknowledge. We have to acknowledge in this case, because English has a history of colonization. It's deeply political what we do. Just the act of speaking. I'm not even going to think about teaching for the second, because just the act of speaking in English as not your dominant language is an act of politics. I would say it's a political act. Um, I think that the idea of English as a lingua franca was born. Jennifer Jenkins is the scholar that came up with the idea, and the way they define it in the articles in the literature is that it's not a specific variety of English that is spoken. It doesn't have a defined form. It's not British English or American English. You don't say cookie versus biscuit in English as a lingua franca. In fact, it is the language, it is the English that is used when people from different cultures and different background languages converse, when they come together to converse. And any English that arises out of it is English as a lingua franca. So, by that definition, the three of us are speaking English as a lingua franca,
Yeah,
right?
we do.
Because the two of
But
you could very easily speak in Croatian. Croatian is the language, right? Oh my gosh, sorry for my ignorance. Okay, yes. I don't want to be like one of those people who say, "Oh, you speak Indian?" Then I'm like, "No, Indian is not a language." Okay. Croatian is a language. Cool. Sorry.
yeah, but while
So
you're in
you could very
Spain,
easily.
and you're regarding your first question,
What is my
I'm
first
not
question?
sure, but are perhaps the most native speakers in the world speaking Spanish? If I'm not,
Yes.
no, yeah.
I think no, Mandarin Chinese.
Oh, so it's Mandarin.
Mm,
Oh, okay.
yeah, just by the sheer number of people in the country. So Mandarin
Hmm.
Chinese. I think it's Mandarin Chinese, Spanish, and then English.
Yeah,
And then maybe Arabic and Hindi, or Hindi and Arabic.
yeah. So it's quite interesting how English came on top.
That's exactly it. It's interesting in many, many ways. It should be interesting, and we should all become more curious about how it came on top. And we should always, always aim to diversify our multilinguality, multilingualness. I don't know if there's a noun that's I don't know what the noun is, but we should always aim to learn other languages at all times, even though we're speakers of English. Um, so yeah, that's a long story long of what English as lingua franca is, I guess.
You made me think of my English partner who speaks, I think, 11 words of Croatian.
Mm.
So when he is in Croatian company and he says three of these words, people
It
react like
always is.
this. Oh my God.
Let's go! Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
I was a language assistant in a Spanish high school for the past 2 academic years. And I was an English assistant, so I helped with most of the English lessons. And anytime, so I was still learning Spanish. I am still learning Spanish, but at the time, especially my first year, I knew very little, and I would take any opportunity to practice with other teachers. And anytime my students heard me say in the hallways, right? If they heard me say "Buenos días" to one of the teachers, they go, "Oh, Deepika habla inglés, oh, no español, no," and they would go wild. And honestly, that was kind of an ego boost, but but that is the reality. I would say the sad reality of the English speaking world, because this is an interesting slash dark joke. I like dark jokes. Um, that comes up often in my head and in my conversations is the question is, what's classy if you're rich and trashy if you're poor? And the alternative version of this might not be politically correct to use on LinkedIn. What is classy if you're rich but trashy if you're poor?
Yeah, we're speechless now.
Bilingualism.
Yeah, but it is really interesting how people expect you to speak English just like that, and any other languages. Wow, you know, three
Yeah.
words.
Yeah. No, but it also depends on what you look like. No? If you look a little different and you're not white, if you speak English, they react that way. Because when I was in the US, in my master's program, when I spoke English, people would compliment me on my English and they would say, "Oh, wow, your English is really good." I'm like, "Okay, thank you, I guess. I've been speaking it all my life, but okay, cool." You know, because it very much matters what you look like, the comments about your language, the kinds of comments that you get about your language. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely remember some comments on previous teachers I've heard in the Czech Republic. If people look different, they're not expected to speak English at a certain level. That is
Well,
true, unfortunately.
that's been true for a while now. Yeah, sadly.
We speak
You
English
don't
as a
need to
lingua
cry
franca.
now, Deepika. It's sad, true, but still.
What does it mean to be fluent in English as a lingua franca then? How do you determine that?
Okay, I'm going to throw it back to you because you're the English teacher here, the English teacher interviewer here. What does fluency mean? And this is a trick question because I'm going to ask, what does fluency mean to your students most of the time? What do people say when they say, "I want to be fluent"?
Perfect. Perfect English. No
Yeah.
mistakes ever. And sounding like a radio host.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Do they
Never
really
heard that
mean
one, but
that?
yeah, it's the mark on the head for sure.
I would
Um,
say that you need to remember the words what you want to say, and not perfect pronunciation and everything.
that I want to throw it
That
to
you can
you.
express yourself and not to really to be like a radio host.
And how? How do you need to express yourself to be fluent?
Well, to know the word, you need to use it sometime.
And if you know,
Like
and
now
if you
that
don't
I
know
don't
the
know
words,
how to express it better, but yeah,
and you're doing it. So if you don't know the words, what happens?
I tried some workarounds,
That's
and it
exactly it.
just is confusing then. At least in my head, I don't know how other people perceive it, but it starts to be confusing for me. I can't remember it all. How to work? How do I work around it? And it doesn't look that fluent to me. Then anyway, I don't
Mm,
need to sound like a radio host to be like that. But just okay, I need to say this, and I don't remember the word for it. Okay, how do I work around that?
yeah, yeah. And I would even say working around is a sign of fluency, um, rather than the opposite. Working around is not a sign of weakness or a lower level. Working around is a sign of fluency. In fact, even in the CEFR, which is the Common European Framework of Reference, for those of you who don't know, Darko may or may not. This is the numbers and letters
Those
that we were talking
numbers
about.
and letters. No, no, no.
Yes, the numbers and letters
I
that
have
we were
no
talking about.
idea.
This is the levels of how language levels are described based on what you can do with the language. And the higher up you go in these levels, basically the more advanced you get in
The lowest is just
any language.
cursing, or how does it go from low to? Oh, okay.
It goes from A1 to C2, but we don't have to go and get into it right now. But my point being, the more advanced you are, or the more advanced you get in a language, the better control you have over these, what is called circumlocution, which is exactly what you're describing, is speaking around the word when you can't find the word itself. And that is a sign of a good English as a lingua franca speaker, actually. So, going back to the original question, what is fluency? In this context, fluency is exactly that. Fluency is being able to communicate what you're thinking with relative ease, right? Using all of the linguistic resources that you have available to you. And that does not only mean you're using the English linguistic resources, but also all of the other languages that you speak. Can you use
And also
um,
nonverbal.
and also nonverbal? Absolutely, absolutely. So, for example, something that I have found myself doing in Spanish is, if I don't know a word for something, um, I don't have a problem either. If I know that the other person speaks a little bit of English, I'll just slip the English word in. 100% fine. Who's checking? It's not an exam, right? And I get my point across. And if they don't speak English, I go into my brain and think of, and I slow down. No, I'm going, espera un momento, no, whatever. And I go into my brain and see a couple of different ways that I would say it in English, pick the easiest one and translate that instead. And you do that all the time without thinking. This is not something that you do consciously. It happens pretty subconsciously, especially when you're advancing in a level, advancing in a language level. It just happens. But sometimes people might need some type of explicit instruction to be able to do this, and that's where these techniques come in now, like thinking about language as English as a lingua franca. So fluency essentially is, I would say, the word that I equate to fluency is ease, rather than speed or accuracy or any of the other words that usually come up. For me, it's ease. How easily can you communicate your ideas? How easily can you get things done?
And
When
ease
it's
comes
about
with
food, I'm
confidence.
fluent in every language. Okay.
What's that?
If it's about food, I'm
That would mean
fluent
that
in
you're
any
fluent in.
language.
Yeah.
Good to know that I'm that fluent.
Brilliant. That's what we want to hear.
We had a comment in the meantime, but I think it was about a part of our conversation that we passed
Yeah.
because
What
there's a
the,
slight delay. So Anna says, or we do
yeah.
care. If you can,
And this was about, I thought it said, or do we care? I read it wrong, and I thought that was about the CEFR framework. But what did she refer to when she said, or we do care?
I'm
I
not
may have
sure.
missed what
I'm
it said.
asking Anna to elaborate there because I think we're not synced. LinkedIn is a bit late.
Yeah. I did say too many things all at once. So
with fluency.
yay.
I kept
Yeah.
thinking, like, if you stub your toe and you swear in a couple of languages, then perhaps you get an extra feeling of ease.
I like that. I like that. That is true. I think swearing in a language is a very good sign of how comfortable you are with the language. There is something about swearing in your favorite or your most dominant language that feels so satisfying that if you can achieve that in another language, wow, you're like C3, D1, I don't know.
We need a special scale just for swearing.
Yeah, or that. Years ago, I listened to a very interesting podcast episode that I will not be able to name or find for you years ago. But they were talking about this very thing that apparently there is a satisfaction scale for how you feel when you swear in a language or two. And it was fascinating. They were talking about like all of the little sounds that usually swear words have that make it satisfying. Yeah. Okay, here's Anna's comment. She says it was about being native, non-native for us teachers. Oh yeah, Dako asked why do we even care? We do care. Yeah, yes, yeah, absolutely.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, the industry cares, and that is not. It's not as beautiful as it sounds.
Industries are always a bit behind the real spoken reality. Takes them a moment to
Mm,
catch up.
mm, yeah, that is true.
Okay, we got this far in the show, 27 minutes in, and we still haven't mentioned accent, which I think is a victory in its own. So
This is so funny, but I have to say, a couple of weeks last month, I was at a conference, and it was the TESOL conference in Spain, the TESOL Spain conference, and I was presenting on this very topic. And I went the entire 50 minutes without saying the word intelligibility, if you can believe me. So it's one of the Darko doesn't understand because the
I
crux
have
of
no
this is
idea.
that it's one of the most important parts of English as a lingua franca is that we're trying to be intelligible, which is we're trying to be understandable. This is the most important aspect of this in between language. But I didn't even say the word. Yay me! But yeah, let's talk about accents. Typically, again, when we're thinking about students' self perceived needs, fluency and accent are the ones that come up right on top. And sadly, both of them are often confounded, no, not with each other, but with other things. They don't usually see it for what it actually is, just like fluency, they think is speed or accuracy or just pelting words instead of the ease. And accent, they usually see as a sign of success if you're able to speak like a native speaker. And again, here, who a native speaker is very different from how most linguists define who a native speaker is, because okay, another pop quiz question. How many countries in the world do you think have English as one of its official languages? Just give me a range if you're afraid to say one number.
I'm still waiting for the audience to answer.
yeah, I think
You're still waiting for the
I think
audience.
there
We
is a
know that there is a
delay.
delay with
Yeah,
the
so
audience.
give them a bit of time for this
Yeah.
one.
Edita, I think you know the
I won't
answer
say anything.
to this.
I think US was
I
added
think
recently. That's all I'm gonna
it
say.
was added recently with a lot of implications. Yes. Darko, come on.
What? What? Oh, I need to answer it. I'm
Okay.
still waiting for, I don't know, like 57?
Nice.
Nice.
Close.
Okay. Can you
A
name them
little
all?
over 70. No, I can't. I
We had
definitely
time for
cannot.
one guess, which was 20.
20.
20?
It's over 70,
Oh, over 70.
actually. Yeah. But this includes all of the countries that have English as one of its many, many, many official languages.
Oh,
Right? So, for example, South Africa has 11 official languages, one of which is English.
really?
And I wish I could give you another example. I could say India, but English is not India's official language. It's one of its auxiliary languages. But we have 22 official languages and English as the auxiliary language. So
How does it work?
many former, exactly, Reena is absolutely right. Many former Commonwealth countries. And interestingly, not the UK. I did not know that. And until very recently, not the US either. Many Commonwealth countries, many countries that were obviously colonized by the UK. But Darko, I think I interrupted you. What was your question?
I don't know.
It's okay.
Oh, how does that work if you have 22 official languages? You need to know all
have-
of them, or government officials
No.
need to know all of them to communicate with you?
No.
No.
No, we have 29 states. And so most of the languages belong to a particular state. So, for example, my state speaks Tamil, but no other states speak Tamil. So the moment I cross the border, I need help understanding the other person who's speaking a completely different language.
Okay.
But we are a large enough population, so it is an official language.
There is
that
one
makes sense.
that everyone understands, or no?
No.
Okay, so you
No.
use probably
If you-
English as lingua franca set. Anyway.
It depends on where you are.
Okay.
Yeah, we use a mixture of Hindi, which tends to be the lingua franca of most of the northern part of the country, but not the south. So we tend to use a mixture of Hindi and English. It depends. If you go into if you're in an urban situation, like you're traveling, for sure, people speak English at different levels. And you'll get by just fine. But if the moment you go to like a tier 3 city or like one of the towns or villages, you might find it harder and harder to find people who speak the same language, one of the languages as you. So it is a huge benefit, and which is the case in India, for you to be multilingual. Most people are multilingual in India, and that is the norm, not an exception, which is the case for the world as well. It is the norm, not the exception.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a comment from
Yeah.
Anna.
Mhm.
Let's talk about accent
Exactly.
bias, still alive and well in how people are judged and perceived. And just like that, accent coaches are popping up like mushrooms after the rain.
Still popping up, and they call themselves accent reduction specialists. And I
then
feel
you
very
just
icky.
sound like AI.
There you go. Yeah. The idea of sounding too perfect now should be a deterrent, because then you're going to sound like AI. So going from I want to sound like a talk show host, a radio host, to I don't want to sound like AI, help me, that's the aim right now. So let's talk about accent bias. We have over 70 countries that have English as its official language, one of its official languages, and many, many more that use English on the daily, but as an unrecognized official language, right? But there are only certain types of English speakers that are considered legitimate. So when you hear, for example, someone who's British in the movies, you automatically associate them with certain things. Like what?
In American movies, villains.
In American movies. Yeah. In American movies.
Villains
Villains?
or the main romantic interest.
Yeah. So classy, powerful, right?
Bullying.
Darko, what do you think? Has this been your experience?
Bullying.
Oh, okay. Sure. If you hear a French English accent in movies,
Chocolate. That's all I can think of now.
what did that mean?
I don't know.
I like
Probably
that.
Chocolate.
Belgian chocolate.
We're
I
playing the
don't
word
know.
association game.
Who knows what program?
Yeah, but something with food. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wine, food.
Yeah, probably. Would you say that if you hear a French accent, you feel that this person is sexy immediately, right? Like Anna says, British accent, posh, royal, powerful, absolutely classy, has money, yeah, intelligent.
Scheming.
French is usually sexy, a little dumb, maybe. What's that?
Scheming was
Edita?
the word that came to mind.
Yeah, for example, scheming. If you hear a Russian accent,
Croat or
Mm,
Serb playing the Russian
really?
gangster. Yeah,
Really?
it means they will recognize the actor, probably.
Yeah. So we all have like preconceived notions about what people sound like, and if they sound a certain way, what they are like in reality, right? And this 100% transfers onto the rest of the population that are not in the movies, but just general people like us. And students, English language learners, typically tend to ask to learn a specific kind of accent. You obviously, nobody's ever going to ask to learn their, like if I'm Indian, I'm never going to ask to learn a Spanish English accent or a Russian English accent. Typically, I would go towards the British English accent or the American English accent because those are considered prestigious, the prestigious varieties of English. But in reality, how easy is it for you to achieve these goals, these accent goals? What do you think?
I think Rena's comment tells us a bit about this.
Is very
Yeah,
relevant. I'm going to go. Give me 1 second. I'm going to disappear for exactly 1 second. Give me.
no worries. Rena is saying, I'm currently in the UK visiting family and friends. Not a single one of us has the stereotypical British accent, the one accent that's represented and portrayed in films, but it's most definitely a British accent. One of the many.
Which one is the one?
The royal queen's accent,
Oh,
RP,
only
received
her.
pronunciation. Yes.
So Scottish,
And now,
Irish,
without her,
this is
it's
completely
done.
something different.
What is the one for you when you imagine a British accent, as if it's only one?
Typically, it's the queens, right?
What about for you, Darko?
It tends to be the idea of. What about you, Darko?
Well, I don't know, like in US movies, let's say. I don't know.
The
Because
British accent
in
in
Yeah,
US.
every
boy.
city in the UK has a different accent, so you cannot just say, okay, this is the one. And probably parts of bigger cities have different accents. Oh,
And honestly, there, if you're not in that world, if you don't already speak one of those varieties of English, it's really hard to at least that's been the case for me. It's really hard to distinguish between these accents. And I don't think students realize this because they tend to say, yeah, Rina's right. Only 1 or 2% of the population of the United Kingdom actually speaks received pronunciation. Because students don't recognize, students know, people in general don't recognize what each accent sound like. They just have these immediate, like without actually analyzing the accent, if they recognize the accent to be something like a normal layperson in the United States, when they hear a southern American accent will immediately go back to the stereotypes part of their brain to associate it with certain things. But if you're not familiar with any of that stuff, like I'm from India, I didn't know about the Southern American stereotype until I moved there. Like I would not have distinguished between standard American and Southern American, right? And that it's happening to me right now with Spanish. I don't typically, I'm not able to distinguish between European Spanish, and there are a lot of Latin American people in the city that I live in, and their Spanish. I'm like, okay, cool, except when there is certain grammatical stuff that come up. Like my flatmate, for example, is Mexican, and that comes up a lot. I'm like, okay, you said that. That's exciting for me that you said that, because people otherwise wouldn't say that here, things like that. But accent, no, I don't recognize it.
And if you weren't a teacher,
Yeah.
you wouldn't recognize the grammar either. Quite probably.
No, it's exactly true. That's exactly true. If I weren't a nerd, for sure, I would not. But that's the thing. That's what's happening is most people are requesting to speak a certain way, usually tending towards the prestigious varieties of English. And that is resulting in this mushrooming of like these accent reduction coaches, right? But what does that say about the industry, the accent reduction industry? What are they trying to do? They're trying to erase reduction. What an ugly word. They're trying to reduce who you are to give way for something else that is conceived as more powerful, which you may or may not be able to achieve ever in your life. You will never be, by definition, we will never be native speakers of English. But that is the promise they usually make. Speak like a native in 30 days or some crap like that, no? Yeah, yes, Brina's right. A lot of classism is involved.
Yes, Rina is
Yeah.
saying, I think a certain amount of classism is involved too. Northern accents such as Scouse, Geordie, and Yorkshire are seen as less educated. I think a lot of people can relate to that in their own countries. And we mentioned Russians in movies very briefly, but I think for us Slavs, this is relevant. We are all grouped together by Americans. So you might see a Polish actor playing a Russian, you might see a Croat, you might see a Serb, and so forth. And it's all one dangerous, rugged image.
This is, I think the result that this has on people is an increase in stereotyping and discrimination. Accent discrimination is a huge concern. The sad reality, again, more sad realities, is that if you think about other types of discrimination, at least there are people in the public, like common lay people, who are considering, say, for example, gender bias or racial discrimination as something bad, and people are speaking up about it, and things are happening towards the eradication of it. But linguistic discrimination often doesn't get as much limelight. People don't talk about it, other than us. Like people who are in the industry, we tend to talk about it a lot. Yeah. Slavs as one big criminal organization, Anna says. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, accent discrimination, I believe, and I'm this is one of my like high, I can save the world things as a teacher, is I believe that English teachers can do something about eradicating the accent discrimination that exists in the English speaking world. I don't know how, but I think we have the power. And one thing I would recommend that teachers do is when students say, I want to speak like a native, ask a series of questions, right? Ask, what kind of native do you want to speak like? And right there, they're already like, oh, I don't know, checkmate. Ask why, no? Ask why. Ask a series of why questions. Why do you sound? Why do you want to sound like a native speaker? Because I want to sound perfect. Why do you want to sound perfect? Because I think that if I'm perfect, I can get better job opportunities. Why do you think that if you're perfect, you can get better job opportunities? Because I think that the employers value um, perfect English communication. What do you mean by perfect English communication? Like ask the series of questions, digging deeper and deeper into where the core belief that gives rise to all of these other limiting beliefs. Usually you can get the answer. Usually you can try and, I don't like using the word convince, but this, I don't know if there's a better word in this context of convincing them that they don't actually need to sound like a specific kind of, like, I don't know, like Brad Pitt or whatever, whoever. No? Yeah, I don't know. If this, I'm being very idealistic or like starry-eyed, like we can do it, we can save the world. But yeah, sometimes I think about this.
It's the teacher mentality. Manipulate people into believing something.
Who said that? Yeah,
Save the
that's
world.
why I think I do think convince is a better word in this case, even though there is a better word out there. Manipulate is not it.
Well, we talked about radio hosts at the beginning. I guess us
Mm.
as podcast hosts using a variety of Englishes, maybe we'll be the ones shown in classrooms in 10 years.
That is the hope.
We'll still be relevant with the
Yes,
food. I
that
think
is
the
the
only
hope.
part that'll be shown is the food excerpt.
And so what? If you make an entire podcast just inviting speakers to talk about what their typical breakfast dish is in their part of the world, I would listen to it, and I would make my students listen to it, being like, here, a couple of new accents for you. Let's talk about the Spanish tortilla with a couple of Croats.
Sounds amazing. Anna is
Yeah, I would do
Don't
that.
give
announcing a
me ideas for a new podcast. I'm really tempted now.
I'm just waiting for it to happen. It's not even a matter of if, it's just when.
I think it's a really great
Anna, go
idea.
ahead. Yes, you can.
Anna is asking if she can ask a question. Of course you can, Anna, please.
Yes, 100%. Be as provocative as you need to. And then we'll decide if it's LinkedIn safe or not.
Now that you talked about English, I just found it interesting that, like in the medical world, lingua franca is basically Latin, and maybe because nobody uses it actively, nobody cares of the pronunciation, the accent on it, so they just speak to each other in Latin, and I don't think they have a
Do they?
problem. Well, about the basic anatomy and.
Oh, sure.
So I don't
I think
think
the
they have
idea is
problem with the different accents of in the world about it.
no, 100%. You're absolutely right. Um, Again, I don't want to go 50 minutes without using the word intelligibility when we're talking about accent discrimination. Wow, Deepika. When we're talking about discrimination, the idea is that you train yourself to hear and speak a language that, a version of your language that can be understood. That's why this particular show or episode of your show is called Understanding and Being Understood, is how much you can train yourself to read the signals and understand what's going on and adjust your speech in a way that you're understood. We didn't get into any of that, but that's okay. Maybe for part 2 or something like
Yeah, good idea for part 2.
that. Well, here's Anna's question if you want to pop it on the screen. This is a long one. Darko, your turn.
Why does everyone know that I need to read it? Okay,
We
I'll
watch your
butcher
show,
it.
that's
Okay,
why.
question from Anna, provocative one, from what I understand. I have no idea about this. ELT industry leaders are talking a lot about equality, and inclusion these days. But when I look around, the conversation still feels strikingly homogeneous. Right? Homogeneous? Homogeneous? Oh. Mostly European, upper middle class educators. I hesitate to say it, but yes, overwhelmingly white. Can we really call it inclusion if the people most affected aren't invited to the table?
No, we cannot.
Oh, that was a simple answer.
Easy answer. No. Yeah.
We expect a
No,
longer
we can't
answer. I
call it
was been
inclusion.
reading it for a minute. Come on.
That is true. That is true. You deserve a longer answer. Well, no, we can't call it inclusion, but honestly, I don't think I have the expertise to even think about how one would go about including people from all over the world. There are more and more people talking about it. Um, but perhaps people who are actually affected are talking about it via their own platforms, and that doesn't show. We also need to consider what social media algorithm looks like, because most social media algorithm promotes the typical European upper middle class white European American, you get the idea, speaker, right? Most of the things that we end up seeing tend to be their voices, their opinions. Maybe there are people who are talking about their smaller contexts in their own platforms or even on the bigger platforms, but they're not showing up. I wouldn't know how to answer the question, how can we include them? But if you're asking, is it considered inclusion? If we don't include them, I would say no, it can't be considered inclusion.
I think there's a language aspect to that as well, because again, we know
100%.
who is thinking of the terms and the vocabulary around it, because we might be talking about
Yeah.
equality and inclusion and somebody else might be saying I'm paid crap and it's because I don't look like him or her.
You, yeah. Mm. I would also say another aspect of the language thing is that maybe they're talking about it in their own languages, right? And that doesn't show up on mainstream social media. Why would it? If your feed is all English and Spanish, or in Anna's sake, one of our other languages, Russian, and all of that stuff, right? Why would it show up if they're speaking in other languages? But I wouldn't know how to bring all of this to the table, to the same table, and invite voices that are otherwise unheard. I wouldn't know how to answer that question, to be honest.
I have another sub question to it.
Mm.
Because I don't what is English language teaching about? It should be about students who want to learn English and actually want to communicate with other people in English. And do
Yeah.
they really care about these issues?
I think everyone cares about something, and you're absolutely right. The main goal of learning any language, and especially a language like English, would be to be heard, right? To be seen and heard. Yeah. Um, to be understood, to express your opinions, to share stories. That's why you learn other languages. And that's why people learn English, because they want to communicate, they want to share their ideas. But what has happened with the English language in particular, I'm not including other languages here because I don't know about other languages, is that English has become a token, a currency of social status, of economic status. It gives you so much else other than just the satisfaction of being heard. So, one example is it gives you a promotion. For example, a promotion has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with being heard. It has everything to do with proving your accuracy and your efficiency with the language to move on to the next step. And that gives you extra money that you need to pay rent and buy food and support your family. And, you know, So English has become that language where it's not just enough to be seen and heard, it's also beyond that because of the heaviness it comes with, or all the political baggage that it comes with, that it
Okay.
becomes quite transactional.
Okay,
So
I
when
understand that, but
no,
as a
I know, but
student,
what I'm trying to say is, from the perspective of a learner, a typical learner would come to you as the English teacher and ask you, "Can you teach me English so I can get a 7.5 on the IELTS because I need to move to Canada to give my family a better life in India," right? For example. Or, "Can you
yes.
teach me English so I can get a B2 certificate so I can present it at work because that's the only thing missing for me to get that promotion, which will give me $100 extra, and that means a lot to me in my country." And that's what this has become, other than apart from, "Can you teach me?" Nobody comes to, very few people actually come to you to say, "Can you teach me English because I need to feel heard? Can you teach me English because I want to connect with the people around me?" People, of course, people are like that, but it has also become increasingly transactional. All of the other contexts have become very significant, let's put it that way, right? And that
Okay,
is
that's
not often
true.
the case with most of the other languages that people are learning. People learn, I don't know, I started learning Spanish for fun. Right now I'm learning it for survival, but I started learning it for fun, right? I had no
Mhm.
obligation to. I was like, cool, Spanish, fun. Or, people learn French in India for fun because they have a couple of extra hours after work or before school or whatever. And that's, people don't have the liberty to do that with English anymore. It's not
Okay,
fun anymore.
that's true about just learning it. But
Mm.
what was my question about? Do they care about this equality and inclusion of others in English and actually the
No.
accents? Okay, when you come into some country, you'll pick up accents or accent of people around you anyway.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
do I really
I
care about which accent do I speak if I have the needed for the promotion this letter and number? I don't
Yeah.
know.
No, but I think you're you're absolutely right to ask that question. But the answer is yes, they do care in the same way that they care
Oh,
about the letters and numbers for the promotion, because that
mhm.
gives them a sense of perceived higher status, if that makes any
Okay.
sense. So if I'm in an English speaking country and I speak with an accent, when people come to me and they ask me, "Oh, where are you from? Your English is really good." And sometimes people just get tired of being asked that question, right? I think there's something to be said
Do you
about that
fake
as
your
well.
accent
Like,
then?
huh?
Do you
So I
fake
don't
your
fake my.
accent
I
then?
don't. Okay.
No,
Okay.
just to
Let's
be
talk about
less good
fake. I don't know
in
if we
that
have time to
accent.
do this. But I code switch is the word I like to use, because I don't speak like this when I speak in English at home, which I do sometimes because I mix my first language in English all the time at home when I'm talking to my family. I'm not speaking like this because I don't have the need to speak like this. I speak with broken grammar. I speak with an Indian English accent because they understand me. But if I spoke like that on an international platform like LinkedIn, people might not understand me. And my goal is to understand and be understood. And so I code switch into this version of my English. And that's what I want to help students see, that they can have multiple versions of their English. But when they go like head on, without learning grammar, without acquiring vocabulary, into I need a standard American accent because that's what will make me be perceived as high status, cool, proficient, classy, whatever adjectives, right? They're losing valuable mental resources, which they could be spending on learning vocabulary and grammar and adding skills to their toolkit that are more important, like negotiating meaning and asking for clarification questions and things like that. But they might be losing valuable time and money and mental load on mastering the sound. I don't know, for example, right? Which is not even important, honestly.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Here's
Uh,
Rena. Go ahead.
Rena is saying we can share, boost, and signpost posts from underrepresented people on social media.
Mhm.
We can also invite them to podcasts, I would say, and communicate with them and use English as it's become lingua
Mhm.
franca. The point is that it's expanded and included so many more people, and I think we should celebrate that.
Mhm. I would love to hear. I would love to see Rena on your podcast talking about DEI. Actually, that would be very interesting and very enlightening.
It's like you're predicting certain things. And
Ooh! Yay! Very good.
and I think one thing to mention here, where I think there's a bit of a conflict in different ways of thinking, people who are freelancers or entrepreneurs and are independent from maybe a corporate or hierarchical mindset,
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
think they are freer, and they're the ones that can actually change the mindset about these issues.
You
Because
have literally defined one of my research questions of the PhD thesis that I'm working on. Is I'm trying to see if freelance teachers, their perceived freedom allows them to pursue other choices in how they teach English and what kinds of Englishes they teach. Yeah, that's one of my research questions, actually. Cool. Yeah,
well, I
100%.
wasn't thinking just about teachers, but people like Darko who will say, "Why do you care? Because I don't
Yeah.
have a boss that's telling me to come with some letter and number or whatever. I
Hmm.
just want to be heard and understood and
I
seen
like
by
that. Yeah.
people who are my clients and my collaborators."
Hmm.
And that's a much lighter perspective to come from. And I think
Mm.
we should aspire to that kind of flexibility around language.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
It's,
I
I
think
have to say, it's been a breath of fresh air talking to someone like Darko. Darko, your opinions that are so like, why? And they're so, you make it feel so obvious. These are the things that we're trying to reframe for the entire industry. And so it's really refreshing to talk to someone who states it as so in such a matter of fact way. So thank you. It's been super fun talking to you about
Thank
this.
you. But it happens in all the industries. If you're too long in it and too deep in it, you don't see the obvious things because
100%. 100%.
things are done the way they
They've
have been
always
done
been
for
done.
years, and you just
Hmm.
say, why? Why is it so?
Yeah. Yeah.
coming after a series of conferences of English language teachers, especially, I think
Yeah. Yeah.
hearing a different perspective is
Certainly.
refreshing.
A different perspective we've heard before, but a different perspective stated so matter of factly, so like nonchalantly. Yeah, that's of course that's how it's supposed to be,
We
right?
have some
It's
cheering.
like Darko, Darko, Darko.
Yeah, I mean, because like Edita
Oh,
said, as a freelancer, yeah, sure, let's go eat now. It's time to eat. Like Edita said, if I'm a freelancer, my main point is to do business with other people. And if I'm understood and another person on the other side understand what I'm saying, then I don't see the problem in whichever accent we speak. Yeah, at least it's intelligible. I may use it also, huh?
yay! I'm making up for T-Sol Spain. Through other people.
Lottie,
Very good.
Lottie
Yeah.
saying very interesting and important discussion. Thank you. Oh
Thank
my
you.
God, we
Ooh.
have a
Oh.
very, very
Oh.
long
I can
comment.
do it. Don't worry, Darko. I'll do it.
Go on.
I think we won't even see the whole thing on the screen, so I'm going to read off of the
Uh,
comments here.
yes,
My
please.
personal experience. Samuel says my personal experience in the business environment. Don't be too fluent with your English when speaking to, example, average Italians, Spaniards, or French. No offense, feel free to use any other nationality south of Denmark.
Oh, you're gonna have to continue, Darko.
Yeah, I'll need to read it. Thank you, Samuel. So I'll need to read the whole question. So south of Denmark, because they wouldn't appreciate it, but on the contrary, your English would be probably too complicated. That's why I try to prioritize communication or the attempt to communicate over correct grammar. And that often leads to the best, most interesting, funniest conversations ever. Keep communicating with people using your hands and feet if necessary, instead of withdrawing because you don't think your English skills are good enough. So, yeah, I think Samuel also has a point there with business usage of it. You can be too English sometimes for other people.
Absolutely. As somebody who's worked in tourism for most of my youth, with a certain level of English, I've always had to go a few levels down with tourists to be understood and to get to a transaction of some kind. Otherwise, you get this kind of stare. And what on earth are you talking about?
I'm watching White Lotus, the third season. If anyone, I'm not going to spoil anything, but there is a character. Just it happened in the first 5 minutes. There is a character who comes into the resort in Thailand and starts spouting off like her entire life's history in very Southern American English, and they focus on like the faces of the hotel staff, and they're like, what? The exact face you made, Edita. I don't know why my internet is acting up, but maybe this is a good time to say goodbye because I don't know when it's going to cut me out another time in the next few seconds.
Yes, especially because people in the comments are telling us to go and eat. I think they're nudging us to to wrap it up.
Thank you so much,
good too.
Deepika, for being here. And we need to have part 2 also.
I would love to have a part 2. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I think this has been a blast. I've had a lot of fun doing this. It is as fun as it looks because I've watched your other episodes and it's so entertaining. And I'm like, they must be having a lot of fun. And now I know you do and I do. So thank you. This has been nice.
We're not faking it.
No, of course you're not. This is great. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who interacted in the comments. Thank you, Anna, Brina, Samuel, Lottie. I'm scrolling down to see if I'm missing any other names.
There are so many people today, so yeah,
Yes,
thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We appreciate you. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Have a good one.